Welcome back to Mindful Escape, the podcast that inspires you to live your best life. My name's Leighton Jewett and I'm your host, and today we have Megan Miller on the show. Megan worked in the hospitality industry for 15 years and now inspires people all over the world to live their life with intention. This is a really great episode and you're going to receive 4 questions that will change your life today. So make sure you listen closely and we'll jump straight in. Megan, thanks for coming on to Mindful Escape. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Leighton, you have the best smile, by the way. I have not told you that. You have the best smile. Here's to live in your passion. You can feel it. A little bit about myself. At this moment in my journey, I am passionately, authentically, purposefully sharing these tools that life had to bring me to my knees for me to learn. And I don't feel that we're ever taught, which is the conversations that you have with yourself and this ripple impact that it has in these cages that we inadvertently place ourselves in because the person we're never taught to learn, to get to know, or trust, or even talk to is ourselves. So after fighting addiction to achieving for my entire life, because it's how I felt worthy, life had to bring me to my knees, mental breakdown, addiction to the booze and the pill popping and the numbing and the overspending and the all the things. 7 years getting to know myself. I am now teaching these lessons, these small micro steps out into the world so you can also step into your power and have a life you actually want to be a part of, not one you need a vacation from.
Yeah, what a powerful intro.
Yeah, and that's why I love so much about the work that you're doing. Like when you were talking to me earlier, Lena, I lit up as you were talking about we feel, and so you can't even see it. It's so interesting how you can have this boulder on your back, or you place yourself in this cage because it's what you were brought up believing you should do, be, want, achieve, and you spend your whole life hustling harder on this ladder of I'll be happy when, and it never satiates the appetite, and you're never taught to really get to know what do you want. And that's why I love so much this community that you're building. So thank you, thank you. We need to do it together. Caring for ourselves doesn't happen alone, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for coming on. So let's jump back into a bit of your past and your journey. So you're in the hospitality industry for 15 years.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the transition towards the end of those 15 years. What was going on for you? What was the trigger that kind of made you change your lifestyle? And yeah, how did that all unfold?
Yeah, I love this question because I feel that we are taught, and I'm curious if you felt the same on your journey, Leighton, that we are taught that it's this one moment. You're going to have this one big aha moment. And now that I look back on my journey, there were all of these small things that I paid no attention to, which if you're like me, I was never raised to talk about the hard things. So I became a runner at a very young age. And when things got uncomfortable, man, I would run right into the thing that gave me the validation, which was my job. So I say all that to say for I don't know the exact time frame. Isn't it interesting? Like things can get so hazy in your mind with life. I always say it was either 5 minutes or 5 years ago. I can't tell. But in any event, I felt this gut whisper for a long time that I was meant for more. And I think we can all write that same memoir at some point in our journey. Is that all there is? But I ran from it for a long time. So this led up into this running from it. I said I'd be happy when I got the corner office, and I did. And then life, universe, divine says, no, girl, you're running in the wrong direction. Has a sick sense of humor. And I had a breakdown, mental breakdown, Leighton, on the busiest highway in Philadelphia. Talk about the irony in that. And then it took me really 7 years after that to begin to answer, what do I want? So after I had this breakdown, man, I had to go into work the next day. I have a mortgage. I have bills. I can't just get up and leave. But what had started to change was I started to get intentional on what I was feeding my mind, these questions I was asking myself. So I stayed with the job 2 years after I had this idea to build this intentional living method and begin to preach it into rooms until I had enough built up financially and I had a runway that I was comfortable that then I could leave. So I guess, like, and I say all of that to say, our world wants you to believe, at least the message that we hear so loud in the United States is make your side hustle your full time hustle, leave your job, quit the relationship, pack up and move. Well, here's the thing, my friends, that no one wants to tell you. You take you to the next thing. So if you really want to fix that inner gut whisper, that's telling you you were meant for more. This isn't doesn't feel right. You got to work on you first, and that takes time.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And actually, you really made me think now because was it in the 5 minutes when I basically, in my decision to quit my job and leave London,
Mm.
was it the 5 minutes that I went to have a look at this apartment and I thought, do you know what? I don't want to live here anymore? Or was it the past 5 years where little things were happening along the way that were kind of pushing me in the right direction of this isn't the life you want anymore?
Yeah. And that also, Leighton, makes me think, and I applaud you for the courage to do that and listening to that voice that even though you're scared shitless, listen, you're leaving your identity, everything that you've known. But to lean into that, whether you want to call it a whisper, whether you want to call it your intuition, whatever you want to call it, that little nagging that says, this feels right. This feels right. Even though you're scared shitless, to still do it. So I've been so much more intrigued on saying yes to the thing that pops up, even if I think, can I do this? Can I? To just say yes to it and have this trust that I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to take that leap. You have to step outside your comfort zone. You have to do the thing that you've never tried before and be a
Yeah.
beginner.
And listen, and oh, I love that you said that, be a beginner, because here's the thing. If you are like me, I do not like to do shit that I'm bad at. I don't. If I think I'm gonna suck, I'm like, no, thank you. No. And I still do this. My husband loves cornhole. It's the summertime here in the United States, and we live in the Northeast. So there's this game that you play, and it's stupid, but it's so much fun. And you toss these bean bags and you try to get them in this hole. And I suck at it. And every time I'm like, Michael, I don't want to play this. And then I do, and I keep getting better and better. So I that's just one silly example to say when you first try something, it's not going to feel great. You're going to suck. You're going to second guess yourself. But there is so much power in the continuity, in continuing to do it and to trust yourself.
Yeah. So you had this breakdown and
Mm.
you spent 2 more years working in this company before you decided to move on from that. Over those, let's say like 2 to 4 years, I guess that was a bit of a transition for you. What were the biggest challenges through that time?
Ah, oh my God. And there were so many late. But here's the thing, isn't it so interesting? Like when you're in the tornado of life and when life brings you to your knees, as it will, because welcome, we're human, you think to yourself, I'm never going to get through it. And then when you finally get to the other end of the dark night of the wood, you think to yourself, God, that tornado wasn't that bad. So now, isn't it so interesting? So now I look back and I think it wasn't that bad. But I remember Leighton questioning myself every single day and also being terrified because in the silence of my own mind I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't think I could do it. I was terrified, and also this job gave me a lot of validation. It gave me a lot of certainty. It gave me a lot of significance as humans, man, we run to that, like we'll even do stuff we know isn't for us if it meets those thresholds. So I say all that to say there were a lot of struggles, but here's what I continued to do that continue to rewire the conversations in my mind, talk about mindful escapes and the conversations you have with yourself. I ask myself these 4 questions. And if any of your listeners want to download them, I'm a little old school. I love to download and print and write, or you can write them down now. They can go to megan-miller.com to download it under Microstep Journal. It's there, or they can just write it down now. So the 4 questions I ask myself this, and I still do every day. Question number 1, how am I feeling today and why? And why? It can be one word, it can be one sentence. Just how are you feeling today and why? I like to do this first thing in the morning before I even grab my phone. You know, you pick up your phone, you check the emails, the social feeds, you do the things. You do that for 3 minutes, you have a 70% higher chance of having a bad day. Can you believe that? So isn't it unbelievable? So what a powerful way to put down the phone and spend these 3 minutes, these 5 minutes, these 10 minutes. It doesn't matter the time. It just matters doing it in a way that you can do in what feels right for you in where you are in your life and your journey. So the first question is, how am I feeling today and why? The second question I ask myself is, what is one small act of kindness I can do for someone else? It sounds silly, but here's what I want you to know. When you start doing these small little acts of kindness, your relationships change. It ignites a passion with you, and you don't find your purpose finds you, and your purpose begins to find you when you start to do these small little acts of service. So for me, it could be something as simple as leaving a love note for my partner by the coffee machine. It could be something as simple as texting a friend, hey, Layton, thought of you. That was a really cool post the other day, or I love what you did with that podcast episode. It could be texting a friend. It could be something to a colleague saying, God, you killed that presentation yesterday. One small thing. Then the third thing I ask myself is, what is one thing I can do today? One small commitment that'll inch me towards the dreams of my life. Now, that's a big loaded question, but let's just say you always wanted to write the blog post, or you always wanted to start the YouTube channel, or you wanted to do the podcast, or you wanted to take the salsa dancing classes, or you wanted to travel to Europe or Portugal, or whatever that looks like. It is taking 10, 15 minutes out of your day to do one small micro step commitment. So whether that's to just write, whether that's to look up where you want to travel to, whether that's to YouTube, how to start the YouTube channel, just one small act and you do it, regardless of what the day tries to throw at you. And then the last question that I ask myself, question number 4 is, what are 3 things I'm grateful for? And I try to be as specific as possible. So instead of just saying my health, I'm grateful that my body continues to show up for me every day. And here's the thing, none of this is earth shattering or new. We've heard this for years and years, but isn't it the simplest things we know we should do, but we don't do? And when you begin to do these things, I have found that it changes how you show up in your life, because you don't experience life, you experience the life you focus on.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's really interesting reading through those questions now, because I can relate different parts of my life to all of them. And one of the things that's coming up is that first question about how are you feeling and why is great, because when you were just talking about the challenging times that you go through, it might not look that bad when you look back, but in that time, it's the worst moment ever. And if you can reframe that in that worst moment ever, knowing that in the future it will be okay, then yeah, your mindset will just shift so quickly, and yeah, you'll have a better day, like you say.
Did you, like, looking back on your journey, did you have practices or anything that you did that gave you the courage to step into your power?
So the one thing every day is
Yeah.
something that I've done literally since I've left. And it's, yeah, what one thing will push me in the right direction. And sometimes I didn't really know what direction that was. So then it was, okay, what can I do today that feels a little bit uncomfortable? So I was growing in confidence and growing in ability in terms of different skill sets, whether that's writing or speaking or learning something. So yeah, it was just one step every day. And the comfort zone thing for me was a massive one because I worked in the corporate world for 15 years like you, and I was doing a similar job all the time. So coming away from that, a lot of things felt uncomfortable.
Mm.
So it was learning to become comfortable in that uncomfortable moment.
Did you struggle, Leighton? I'm curious. This was a real big hurdle for me to talk about the tough times. I did not realize how much of my identity was in that previous job, even though it wasn't serving me. I was getting the accolades and I was good at it. And it's how people knew me. And I feel that when you start to step into your power or do something different, not everyone's going to be on the journey with you. And it can feel lonely. It can feel like, what am I doing? It can feel like you question yourself a lot. I don't think I was prepared for how much I would question myself, how people weren't along on the journey, my identity to the job, and what a difficult transition that is. Did you find that in your journey?
Yeah, and I think it's so easy to attach yourself. And
Mm,
in my mind, I was an estate agent, a real estate agent. So I would always say to people, they're like, "What do you do?" I'm a real estate agent. And you
yeah.
become that identity. And then even when I left, people would be like, "What do you do?" And it would be, "Oh, well, I used to be a real estate agent." And I was still associating with that. But
Yeah, I really struggle with that. And here's what's so interesting. 2 years into building this movement, I find that I've just started to get comfortable saying, I have my own business. I'm an intentional living expert. I help people with blah, blah, blah. But it took 2 years. So, to your point earlier about saying about the one small commitment every day and not knowing what's on the other end of that, as someone who lived my life and I still struggle with this, like needing to control, needing to know what's going to be on the other end of that decision. When you make this one small promise to yourself and whatever feels right to you, and you do it, it's amazing how it begins to build this connection to your intuition and how you show up, and it begins to help you loosen the grip around the wheel of life a little bit. And that's where I found some beautiful serendipitous kismet things began to fall into place. Did you find that too?
yeah, and I've got a really great question actually, because
Yes.
control has been coming up a lot for me recently. And as I'm starting to let go of things and allow things to unfold more naturally, I feel like I'm trying to grip onto other things in my life and take more control over them. So, how have you found that kind of letting go of things and allowing yourself to evolve in comparison to the other parts of your life where you're like, actually, I need to know what the outcome is here. I need to do it this way.
Oh, you are taking me to church, my friend, with this question, taking me to church. Because so for me, my entire life, Leighton, so I was raised by a single mother. It's funny how you like never you can go through your whole journey and never unpack your childhood, who you really are. Right? So for the majority of my life, I never really stopped and paused and unpacked this. That I was raised by a single mother. Father left. I was a chubby kid from a very small town. We didn't have a lot of money. We had a lot of love, but I had a speech impediment. I was a C student. And so for me, I never felt like I was worthy or good enough. And the first thing that ever made me feel like I had something to contribute was the job. And when I got my first job in sales, Leighton, and I was good at it and I got the accolades, it was the first time in my life I thought, shit, this is it. And it was like a drug. So from that point moving out forward, and I'm 39 today, I have fought this addiction to achieving as my self-worth, my value in the world, this illusion of control, right, that it gives you. And I still struggle with that. So for me, my entire life has been about getting the next thing. And I think it's so easy for that to happen, especially in our consumerism world where it's about beating the next person, getting the more likes, getting the more downloads, getting the more customers, getting the more things, doing it better than anyone else. And that can become your life. And I just heard this the other day during I started to do some guided meditations, game changer. We can unpack that if you want. And Wayne Dyer had said this, and I thought, God, this is such a gift. And it spoke to me, and I've been thinking of this every day since. Life is not about getting ahead of the person beside you that the world can make us believe it is. What it's about is not dying with your music inside you, putting your music out into the world and trusting that who needs to find it will find it. And I thought, God, that's beautiful. So that hearing that has allowed me to loosen the grip of control. Do I still have a lot of work to do in the area? Absolutely. But hearing that has given me this sort of this faith and this courage. And the other thing, Leighton, if I can share this, that has really been powerful for me is my connection to spirit, to spiritual connection. You know, my entire life I was raised to believe a certain thing, went to church with my grandmother, had to sit in the pew. It never felt right or worthy. I never felt a connection to it. And I ran from it for a long time. And it wasn't until later in my journey that I found a connection to spirit, something that felt right to me. And when you can do that, man, it gives you this faith to push through the fear.
Did you find that maybe not so much before, but now with that pushing through the fear and attaching to those accolades, are you still focusing on the destination?
Leighton, so we just got a puppy, and this puppy is ripping this carpet up. Hold on 1 second. Stella. I'll tell you what, she's a
Brilliant.
rescue puppy. She's so cute, but man, girlfriend is busy. Girlfriend is busy. My husband's gonna come home and be like, "What happened to our carpet?" Yeah. Yeah. I would say listen, I'm still focused on the destination. I'm someone who needs to set goals. I need to set goalposts. I need to achieve. I need to know where I'm driving the car, right?
Mhm.
I need to have a destination in mind. But I will tell you, I've become more aware and more open to it might not look how I intended, but it's who I become along the journey. So just for instance, Leighton, this morning, I was looking at my vision board, my goals for my life that I set earlier this year, looking at these 6 different drawers of my life because I was so addicted to work for so long. So my health, my self-worth, my spirituality, career, finances, and relationships. And in one of the drawers, I had put about wanting to become a mother. So I'm 39 here in the United States. There's a lot of pressure on women to become mothers. And I just thought this morning, what a gift it's been to rescue Stella, our dog, from a humane society that needed love and support. And maybe that is meant to be my motherhood in this moment. And it just felt like a little gift from the universe. So I guess I say all that to say, I find that yes, I still need to set goalposts. I still need to know where I want to go, but I am way more open to looking at it from a different lens and to
Mhm.
seeing that it might not look how I intended, but that is still success.
Yeah, what I like there, it's you're going in a direction and
Mm,
you know what direction you're going in, and you've got an idea of where you want to get to, but you don't have to specifically get to that point because you don't know what's going to come up.
right. And I heard someone say this. I had a girlfriend tell me this once, and I loved it. She said to me, Meg, it's not about achieving the goal. It's about who you become along the process. And I thought, oh yeah. Yeah,
I love that.
that's so true. And one question I ask myself, Leighton, as I've gotten more into not only my spiritual journey, but also connection to me, I feel that we are so quick, especially in the United States. We want to Google an answer. We want someone to give us the roadmap. We want to survey our closest friends and family. Tell me what to do. Whereas my guidepost on any decision that I make, for the most part, has been first and foremost, does it feel right to me? And then I make a decision based off that.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that. I've written that down. I'm going to be looking at that every day. It's huge
Please,
to
my
come.
friend, please
It's so
pass it
good.
forward. It's so good. And it gives you this. I have found, Layton, that since I've started to do that, it's rewired the conversations that I've had in here, and I'm putting to the grumbling that lives up in my mind that we all have, which tells us, you suck. Who do you think you are to do that? You can't do that. Don't put that out. You'll fail, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the gremlin tells you, or it is what it is. It's fine enough. It's good enough. But the moment that you began to keep those promises to yourself, those 4 questions, the moment you began to ask yourself, does this feel right to me? And it can be something as stupid as, what do you want to eat today? It doesn't need to be this huge life decision. It can just be something as simple as that. There's a kinder voice that begins to show up here in your brain, and it rewires the conversations you have with yourself little by little every day. It's a beautiful gift.
Yeah, it's so good. It's just that reminder of when things aren't going the way you specifically want them to, that you are growing, you're evolving, you're developing along that journey.
Yes. And isn't it funny, Layton, how I just had a conversation with a girlfriend about this? This transition, listen, our life is full of transition periods. What's that saying? Like, the only constant thing about change is there will always be change. And when there is a state of transition, if you're like me, someone who bucks against change, you hold on tighter to the things that no longer serve you. And then you sort of get into this shame cycle of, I keep telling myself that I want to quit this job, but I'm not. I keep telling myself that I want to move, but I'm not. And then it just keeps you stuck. And so I have found that when I make these small promises to myself, for instance, back to those 4 questions, and I keep them, regardless of what pops up in the day, it can break you out of that shame cycle that we can so quickly get stuck in, and you don't know how to get out.
Yeah, I've noticed actually people can identify with that as well. So, say you're unhappy in your job, you can then identify as that person who is unhappy in their job, and you get
Mm.
stuck with that identity until you can then rewrite that script in your mind.
Oh, yeah. Or the weight, or
Mhm.
the overspending, or the boozing. Like, Leighton, when I look back in my life, because I was uncomfortable for so long, this is the beautiful thing about aging, is the wisdom that comes with it and how you get to know yourself. I was just telling a girlfriend yesterday, you might look at me from exterior purposes or hear on this podcast and think that I'm an extrovert, and I am an extrovert, but I am also an introvert. And I also need that time alone. And I also, on top of that, had a lot of social anxiety, and I never even realized it. So my coping mechanism was to booze.
Mhm.
And for the longest time, then I was the party girl, and that became my identity. So as you were just talking about being identified as the person stuck in your drive, it can in your job, it can be in any facet of your life, and then you don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, along your journey, I'm sure there's been loads of lessons. If
Mm.
there was maybe one or two that really stand out that you could share with us today, what would they be?
Oh, yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is, and I think I have the bracelet on, I'm a huge believer in creating a word and seeing a word. And for me, that word is trust. And looking back, if I could go back to who I was even 2 weeks ago, I would say to myself, trust yourself. You know what to do if you create enough silence to hear yourself, and just trust. You don't have to be so afraid. I feel that for so long, I held myself back because I did not trust myself. And I think we all do that. And my message would be to anyone listening who's been running from those inner gut whispers, you know what you want to do, and trust yourself, because here's what's on the other end of it. Someone that's been in this journey for 7 years and now have had this movement built for 2 years. It is so much more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. And you deserve to give yourself that same gift.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things for a lot of people is that self-belief.
Mm,
Have you got any advice for anyone who struggles with that confidence or that believing in themselves that could maybe help them?
yeah. I am a huge believer as someone who's lived with it. I like my whole life I have struggled with confidence. My whole life. And I think that the most boisterous people often do. I was all often the most boisterous one in the room and I've struggled my entire life and I would say confidence comes from within. It does. And I have found that my confidence in myself has begun to emerge when I make just one small promise to myself and I kept it. Like you said earlier when we talked about those 4 questions, and to make one small step every day and do it regardless of what the world tries to throw at you, regardless of how when you tell yourself, I don't feel like it, I'll do it tomorrow. Then the next day comes and you do it tomorrow. You're not going to feel like it. Our world wants you to believe that you're going to feel like it. You're going to feel motivated. It's going to be great. No, it's not. None of that. But you begin to feel confident in yourself and get to know yourself when you keep the promise to yourself, regardless of how stupid or how small it can be. It can be the 15-minute walk around the block if you're feeling uncomfortable in your body. It can be just writing. It can be just even posting the thing that you've been wanting to say, regardless of how many likes it gets. It's just putting it out into the world. And you do that every day. And it's amazing what rooms you'll begin to put yourself into, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, one of the best things about that is when I've spoken to people who have done that, a few weeks or months later, they say to me, do you remember that time I said to you I was scared to put that post out or
Mm.
I was scared to try that thing? I don't know why I was afraid. It just seems so easy now.
Oh, yes, it does. Like you were just asking me earlier about the hurdles. Now that so far in this journey, I'm like, God, they didn't even seem that bad. But let me tell you what, it was like Mount Everest at that moment. And Leighton, I just had this idea I want to share. We are in a digital crazy world behind the screens, especially here in the United States. It's a lot of you wake up, your phone, your laptop, your phone. You go anywhere and people are on their phones, on their screens. It's ridiculous. And you can so quickly get caught into the trap of your worth is tied into the likes and the algorithms and the things. And then you post the thing and you didn't get the likes and you thought, I'm not doing that again. Here's what I want you to know, my friend. The only barometer before you post anything, before you put anything out into the world that you want to share is, does it feel right to me? Back to that. And if it does, then who cares about the likes? It felt right to you. And the person that needed to hear that, even if it was one person or 2 people, that's a beautiful gift that you just gave.
Yeah, I think there's something so powerful about sharing your story. And
Mm.
even if it just helps one person, you've helped one person.
Oh, you do. And here's what I have found. The more that I began to put my journey out into the world. So, Lane, I don't even know if I shared this with you. A few months ago, I did a TEDx that came out into the world called Detoxing Off the Drug of Achievement. And when that came out, I watched it in my living room with my husband and my parents. Talk about like your most trustworthy group of advisors, right? But I was terrified. I wanted to throw up for the entire 15 minutes. I could not even watch it. I couldn't wait for it to be over. I didn't even want to hear it. And here's the thing that's on the other end of that. A few weeks of that talk being out, I had people reach out to me that I have known late in my entire life. And I only realized then, after I had enough courage to put my own mask down and be vulnerable and sit in that uncomfortableness of it, did I write people around me a permission slip to put down their own mask.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful gift. So when you get enough courage to share your story in a way that feels right to you, or is it going to feel uncomfortable? Absolutely. Are you going to question yourself? Absolutely. But I want you to sit in it and I want you to continue to do it because you're writing people around you a permission slip to also put their own mask down.
Yeah, that's so good. Such good advice. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Before we finish up, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, intentions. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I had shared the TEDx stage with this beautiful woman. You guys have to check her out. Leighton, I'll introduce you to her to have her on your podcast. She talks about psychology and communication. Talia Jacqueline. And she talked about when someone asks you what you do, you should talk about what pisses you off. What pisses you off? And I loved that. And Leighton, what pisses me off is this exhaustion as a status symbol, these cages that we place ourselves in, this busy badge of honor, that thinking that we'll be happy on the other end of the accolade and we just live our lives in this robotic transactional state. And I am passionately sharing these micro steps, these questions, these lessons learned that it took me 7 years through detoxing off my own drug of achievement to share with these rooms and communities so that you can step into your power and change the conversations with yourself. Because when you do that, this really cool thing begins to happen. You read the emails differently. You talk to your boss differently. Talk to your kids differently. You talk to your partner differently. You talk to your family differently. You show up in every other area of your life differently. The ripple impact is so beautiful. So I am delivering that in workshop formats and keynote formats in any room, in any community that is looking to change the way they show up, are tired of feeling robotic, are tired of feeling burnt out, are tired of living just to make it through the day, and want to show up with more creativity, innovation, excitement, fun, and passion.
Love it. So
Yeah.
beautiful.
And you can, if any of that sounds interesting for whether your organization or association or church group or school or academia, whatever feels right, please check me out, check this movement out, check our tribe out at megan-miller.com. I also have a podcast called Attention to Intention, 20 minutes, exactly what Leighton and I talked about here, just these 20-minute intentional micro steps that'll change how you show up. There's also our social feeds there. Come into the tribe and connect with us in a way that feels right, because caring for yourself, man, it does not happen alone.
I love it. Thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate you sharing.
Oh, Leighton, thank you for having me here. Thank you for giving me a platform. And thank you for being patient with dear Stella as she tore up our carpet apart during our time together.
No, perfect. Adds to the excitement of the show.
That's right. Here's to being human, man. Here's to being human.
Keep it authentic.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Leighton.
And there we have it. Thank you so much for listening. If you didn't write down those questions, make sure you jump back and take note, or head over to megan-miller.com where you can download those questions and start asking yourself those questions either today or tomorrow, because it will have a huge impact on your life. The biggest takeaway for me was it not being about the destination, but who you become along the journey. That really hit home with me, because there's so many things I've tried to achieve over the last year or two through my transition and through my journey, and it might not always end the way I hoped it to end, or I might not have got to exactly where I wanted to get to, but it's given me the tools, it's given me the experiences to become the person that I am today, to enable me to do the things that I'm doing today, and essentially will enable me to do what I want to do in the future. So think about that when you're coming up against challenges or finding something difficult. It's not about that destination, it's about the journey, enjoying it, learning, evolving, and growing. Thanks so much for listening. If you found value, make sure you share it with a friend, and I'll see you again, same time next week.